Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Big Island Nembutsu seminar for this year. I'm Reverend Blaine Higa. I'm the minister of the Kono Honganji Buddhist Temple, and I'll be serving as your moderator for today's session. We are so happy to welcome Reverend Dr. Jeff Wilson as our speaker this morning. So please join me in Gassho, and let's recite the Nembutsu together. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida.
Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namata. Again, so welcome. Our topic for today is living Nembutsu, Jodo Shinshu, and social engagement. And so, as from the description for the seminar, how and why do Buddhists engage with social issues in their communities and in wider society? You know, what resources are found in the Jodo Shinshu Buddhist tradition for tackling the challenges of our time? What are some of the inspiring examples of Buddhists making a positive impact in the world, in Hawaii, and beyond? You know, let's explore these questions and consider Buddhist answers around climate change, racism, LGBTQIA+, inclusion, and other important matters. And so, a few things for housekeeping. So we do have refreshments here in person, so please help yourself to the refreshments and to the drinks. Also, the bathrooms are out the door this way, down the hall. For those of you in Zoom, thank you for joining us. And so please remember to keep yourself muted throughout your time unless you are speaking. Also, we will be recording the session, so if you choose not to have your beautiful image on the camera, please, you can turn your camera off. And so regarding questions, so our format this morning, we will have a presentation by Dr. Wilson, and then we'll have a time for Q&A with him. And so those of you online, what you can do is type your questions into the chat, and then we will get to them during the question and answer period. And if you choose to, during that time, you can also let us know, and we will put you on screen, and you can ask your question in person, online. So without further ado, let me introduce our guest speaker for today. Dr. Jeff Wilson is a professor of religious studies and East Asian studies at Renison University College and the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada. He is a former Yehan Numata visiting chair in Buddhist studies for the Department of Religion at the University of Hawaii at Mānoa. Dr. Wilson is the author of Buddhism of the Heart, Reflections on Shin Buddhism and Inner Togetherness, among other books. His recently published book is entitled Living Nembutsu, Applying Shinran's Radical Engaged Buddhism in Life and Society. Dr. Wilson also received his Tokudo ministerial ordination from the Nishi Honganji in 2012. And so without further ado, Dr. Wilson, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, Higa, and thank you everyone for being here. I hope everyone can hear me all right. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. All right, I can project a little more if I need to. Yes, thank you. Glad to see people here today. Glad that we have many people joining us on Zoom today. If you're here present and you get hungry and thirsty, go ahead and get some refreshments. It won't bother me. Just try to do it quietly. If you're online and you get thirsty, I don't know, put in the chat. I'll pour something on the keyboard. Maybe that'll help you. And we'll just proceed from there. I've got about an hour's worth of presentation put together here. I'll try to be mindful of my time, so you'll see me look over occasionally. And as we approach here in Hawaii, 11 o'clock hour, I'll try to ramp it down and we can move on to some questions and answers, both from the people here today and online. So let's go ahead and start with my presentation, which is titled Living Nembutsu, Jodo Shinshu, and Social Engagement. Sorry, I'm trying to advance the next slide. It's not actually advancing. Is it possible that my controls are off or something here? Did work previously, but now there's the actual time. Of course, it's not working. Yeah. So there, now it's working. Okay. Can I do it? Yes. Thank you, Sensei. Okay. Clearly, I just didn't have the golden touch. All right. So moving on, here we go. So we're going to be talking about Buddhist engagement with social issues today. And this can take many, many different forms. I'm going to give you some examples today, but even in an hour, I can't possibly exhaust all the different ways that Buddhists have engaged with social concerns. And certainly not all the further possible ways that we might do so in the future. So what are some broad examples of Buddhist engagement? Well, certainly charity work and social welfare work. These are long established within the overseas temples, within Japan and Asia. This sort of work goes back basically to the beginning of Buddhism. The original Sangha under the Buddha was already involved in various forms of social welfare work and charity work. That continues all the way to today. We have a problem? Whatever we need to do. Oh, that's the next. I'll just try to put that out of my way. Always sit on the screen that way. Oh, yeah. Better. Might have to do that. Okay. Thank you, Sensei. All right. Thank you. Yes, I apologize to everyone. I didn't realize that you could see that in the middle of the slide there. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Talking about social welfare work. So even as much as just recently with the terrible fire that we just had in Lahaina, right? And already many people in the temples and other organizations are stepping up to donate goods, money, showing their care this way. So that's obviously one immediate example of being engaged with social concerns, the concerns of the people who've lost their homes, been injured, in some cases lost lives, certainly businesses are affected and all that sort of thing. So that's our direct charitable action. Definitely an example and something we see throughout Buddhist history. Some other possible examples include things like political activism. This is something that Buddhists have also been involved with, although we may have less knowledge of that. Just one moment. I noticed that I've got a whole bunch of people on the side here. I wonder if you're seeing all that too. If I move this to there, that might help the slides better. Thank you. So I'll give some examples maybe of political activism here today as well. Nonviolent direct action. This is something, when we think of social or political activism, we often think of this sort of thing. Marches, sit-ins, protests, this sort of thing. Absolutely something Buddhists have been involved with from Buddhist motivations. Peace work, this is a very important example. And certainly here in Hawaii, we have Peace Day, and coming up very soon, we'll be doing Ring Your Bell for Peace and this sort of thing. These are examples of Buddhists being involved, being engaged in social issues or concerns, and many classic ones such as hospital chaplaincy, hospice chaplaincy, prison chaplaincy, taking Buddhism, taking the Dharma to the places where people are suffering. So that Buddhism's not just here in the temple, but going directly down in the trenches where people are suffering, certainly in hospitals or in hospice situations or in the prisons. Clear examples of suffering and bringing the Dharma to people in a way that helps them very directly. I do have an example here in my picture. Here we have some members of the Honganji BWA, Buddhist Women's Association, and the supporters marching in the 2019 Martin Luther King Jr. parade. So that's over in Honolulu. So this is absolutely an example of that sort of thing. Once again, I'm not advancing my slides. That does it. Okay. All right. I figured out the trick. Thank you. So that's great. What are some of the sources, though, for social engagement in Pure Land Buddhism? A lot of work has been done on what they call engaged Buddhism or socially engaged Buddhism. But a lot of what's available in English is not written from a Pure Land Buddhist perspective. There's a few lineages, particularly sort of Zen Buddhism, especially in the Vietnamese lineage of Master Thich Nhat Hanh, which people may be very familiar with. There's some other people from Theravada or Tibetan Buddhism who've been very prominent writing in this area, and their works are great. But they don't usually have a Pure Land perspective. And in fact, despite the fact that Pure Land Buddhists have been involved in all of the ways I just discussed for generations, knowledge of that history, of those efforts, and why those people might be motivated as Pure Land Buddhists to get engaged in order to help reduce suffering in the world, that's something that isn't generally in the English language conversation. So that is, however, part of my research and some of the things I want to talk about here today. So what are some sources for social engagement that we find within Pure Land Buddhism specifically? Well, the three that I'm going to pull out today are certainly the sacred story of Dharmakara Bodhisattva and Amida Buddha. These are the central stories of our tradition, and they are strong motivators for going out into the world and helping other people. I want to argue also that the life experiences and the teachings of Shinran Shonin are another prime source that we can look to for understanding how and why Pure Land Buddhists can be socially engaged. And then also, I feel that the particular history and experiences of Buddhist communities, of the Honganji temples and community overall, are also motivators very much for getting involved, and they impact what sort of issues we choose to be involved with, certainly. So all of those are things that we draw upon. Let's start here with that story of Dharmakara. Sorry, move this out of the way just a little. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the story of Dharmakara. This is probably something that's familiar to most attendees, but then again, we may have some people who are less familiar. So let's just kind of narrate this a little bit. So who is Dharmakara? Well, Dharmakara, this name means the storehouse of Dharma. Dharma is the truth, the Buddhist teachings, reality, the way things are, especially in their correctly understood nature. So this name, Dharmakara, or in Japanese, Ozo, this is the Bodhisattva who acted as a storehouse of the Dharma, storing this Dharma to be able to provide it to all beings everywhere. So in the story, Dharmakara is actually a king. He's a wealthy, elite person in his society, but he renounces that power. He renounces that wealth and privilege in order to help all other beings. So he takes himself out of this privileged place and instead begins to pursue the Bodhisattva path, becoming Dharmakara. And so in the story, he searches all of the lands, all the different countries, all the lands, all the places throughout the universe. In fact, he searches through them, looking for the best solutions to suffering. This is why he's looking at these other lands. What are their qualities? What are their properties? What is working there? What is not working there? What can we learn from all of them? Take the very best, and then learn from those lessons, and sort of distill the best possibilities, right? So in the story, as he's sort of investigating, he's looking, he's meditating on all these things, he doesn't move like for eons. He's sitting there because he's looking at everything, he's contemplating so deeply. He's moved by his compassion, so he just sits there and he thinks about it, works it all through, getting ready to liberate all beings. That's why we have this image here. This is him becoming Amida Buddha. He sits for so long, his hair grows out. He doesn't move for the longest time. So he grows a great big hairstyle like this, and it is a very distinctive Pure Land version of the Buddha. Nowhere else will you ever find a Buddha with a great big afro. It's only Amida Buddha in this tradition that does this, right? And the afro itself is actually a visible symbol of that deep compassion. The vow to liberate all beings is why he's not moving, why he's not shaving his head as a Buddhist monk would normally do. So the hair itself shows you visually exactly what's going on there. This is from a temple in Kyoto. So This is the background for him. He examines everything. Oh, push this one. There we go. Okay. So what does he discover after he looks at all these different places, considers what they're doing, what's working and not working in their societies? Well, he comes up with this vision of what a perfect land and a perfect society would be like. He's looked at all the other places and he's figured out what would be perfect. So he decides that his solution is he's going to become a Amida Buddha, and this is how he's going to liberate all beings, because he's going to create what we call a pure land, which is to say a land which takes all the best qualities that he's learned from his research and has creates a society in that land which has all the best qualities that he's been meditating on, contemplating, and learning from, and he's going to distill that into the most perfect situation. And then anyone who encounters that will naturally be able to be freed from suffering, because it is a perfected place where suffering has been removed because the land and the people are in harmony there. The society runs properly. It's all fused with the Dharma that he has stored up in this way. And so it's the perfect situation, right? So Amida Buddha, this name Amida means infinite, enlightening wisdom, and life-supporting compassion. This is how we would translate these ideas to English. Amida Buddha, though, is a very nice, quick way to say it, right? And what's really interesting about this particular situation is that he stakes his own liberation on the liberation of all others. So he's not becoming a Buddha because, hey, it's great to be a Buddha, but is becoming a Buddha on behalf of others. That's standard. Most Buddhists, certainly in the Mahayana tradition, practice with others in mind. But he goes further and says, here's a standard sort of vow of his from the Larger Pure Land Sutra. If for countless eons to come, I should not become a great benefactor and liberate all the destitute and afflicted everywhere. This is just one of his various vows. May I not attain Buddhahood. In other words, may I continue to suffer and not reach nirvana, even for myself, if any destitute or afflicted, any suffering people anywhere are left behind in the process. So this is he's actually gambling. He's risking his own liberation. He won't have it unless others are able to have this as well. So we can see that that real care for others, this is the stimulus for the Pure Land tradition, right? And so in this process, he makes these 48 vows of liberation, right? Creating the Pure Land in order to liberate us. And because this is Dharmakara and then Amida Buddha's vision of a perfect land in society, what they would be like, obviously this provides a vision for ourselves, a sort of a template that we can learn from, and suggests ways in which we might try to conduct ourselves, organize our own land, our own society, in ways that might be in harmony with that Pure Land ideal. Here's a slide with a lot of text on it. Memorize it quickly, because I am going to give you a test at the end, right? I am a university professor, so no, don't worry about it. You guys go back and look at it later. It's being recorded. But what I've done here is just to give you an idea. I've taken the 48 vows out of the larger sutra. These are the primary vows. Amida Buddha actually makes additional vows, but these are the 48 primary vows, right? And I've gone through and I've just sort of indicated what the intent is behind them. These vows are from a long time ago in several languages before they get to us in English. So they are phrased in ways that are not always immediately recognizable to us as to what's going on there with that vow. So I've tried to get at the reasoning behind each of these vows here. What's going on? I have here, for example, the first couple of vows are vows that no one will encounter suffering, right? And these may be phrased as, for example, You will none of the three evil courses will exist, or this sort of stuff. But that sort of language may not immediately resonate with us. But what is the Buddha saying? No one's going to encounter suffering in this sort of perfected situation, right? We have several vows that the intent behind them is that no one's going to experience discrimination or suffering due to their appearance or even to race, ethnicity, this sort of thing, right? We have lots of vows about not experiencing suffering due to physical or mental impairment of some sort. And somewhat related to that, we have several vows about not having to worry about the body. And there's a lot of different things on here, right? If we go down the list, we'll see there's specific vows that there'll be no suffering caused by poverty. Everyone will have sufficient clothing, so lack of material goods would not be a source of suffering, and so on. Gender discrimination is brought up here as well. So this is to say that Dharmakaya Bodhisattva, Amida Buddha, recognizes all of these as sources of suffering in our imperfect world, our impure world, what we call the world of samsara, the world of suffering, of birth and dying, right? And in the ideal situation, no one would suffer because of these things. Well, if that is the ideal situation, and that is the situation that the Buddha has spent eons putting together in creating the Pure Land in order to liberate us, then obviously we might take from that some lessons about what we want to do in terms of doing what we can in this world to try to make things better and to reduce suffering. So here we have Amida Buddha, and this Buddha will be familiar to many people in the tradition, but then just in case we have people who are newcomers on Zoom or wherever today, I want to quickly just talk about Amida Buddha. You know, Dharmakaya does succeed in that quest to create the Pure Land, and therefore does become Amida Buddha. And this Amida Buddha is unique amongst all the Buddhas. All Buddhas are compassionate. All Buddhas are wise. All Buddhas are caring. If you don't have those things, you're just not a Buddha. I don't care, you know, what you look like or, you know, how good your philosophy is. Without some compassion, without care for others, there's not a Buddha actually there, right? You haven't earned that title. But that said, there are differences amongst the Buddhas. And Amida Buddha is unique as the Buddha who truly embraces all beings without making any exceptions at all, and embraces them as they are without making demands on them to become good enough to be compassionately embraced by that Buddha. So unlike other Buddhas, Amida Buddha admits all people to the Pure Land, right? Other Buddhas also have their own lands, but to get in, you have to qualify in various ways. There's no like velvet rope in front of Amida Buddha's Pure Land. Everybody gets in. So this is unique in that way, right? And there's no actions that are required. That's unique as well. Other Buddhas make vows, I'm going to create a Pure Land, but evil people can't go there. Or I'm going to make vows, people can go there, but they have to achieve a certain level of wisdom or morality or something. So there's various ways they close it off. Amida Buddha, so the gates are wide open, everyone come to the Pure Land in this, right? And so because of that, we're just naturally drawn by the action of the Dharma essentially towards the Pure Land. This is the process. Just as we are able to advance in that direction. Okay. So I'm going to be talking about specific principles and specific examples. But just before I do so, this is really key. This is what I see as the link, so the pivot point between Jodo Shinshu spirituality in general and social action, which is to say between the spirituality, feelings and such, and application and action in the real world there. What is that pivot? It's gratitude. I think for Jodo Shinshu practitioners, the idea of gratitude as being important is not going to be like a big surprise. No one's like, oh, never heard that one in a Dharma talk, right? This is the central point of Jodo Shinshu spirituality. But it's so important, I have to come back to it and emphasize it, because gratitude isn't just about like, oh, thank you, hey, that's great. But it provides something that is also, it's a stimulus for us to then act upon further, right? So Jodo Shinshu is interesting because amongst all of the forms of Buddhism that there are right now and that there have been in the past, and that's a lot, 2,500 years, very diverse religion, Buddhism, right? Amongst all of that, we can nonetheless say that Jodo Shinshu is unique in rejecting meditation, precepts, and other common elements of Buddhism as methods to achieve full Buddha level awakening. Jodo Shinshu doesn't reject them and say, oh, they're bad, they're evil, don't do them, you can't, but what it rejects is the ability to do those things to an extent that they themselves will cause you to reach Buddhahood. They're not the path to Buddhahood in Jodo Shinshu, right? Why is this? Well, there's several reasons behind that sort of approach. First of all, these advanced practices are basically impossible for sort of ordinary lay people who are not living monastic lives. With our regular lifestyles, we can't really do these to a level which would make them effective. Doesn't mean you can't do some meditation, calm down a bit, lower your blood pressure, maybe get a little more mindful so you're less likely to smack your kid, but like, oh, okay, all right, wait, all right, I'll wait a minute, like, oh, that's good, but like that's like kindergarten Buddhist meditation stuff, right? The really, really advanced meditation stuff that actually reaches Buddhahood is not really possible for us under these living and material conditions that we have as regular lay people. So Shinran therefore opposed these sort of practices because they couldn't liberate everyone. It isn't that some monk somewhere on a mountaintop can't take these really awesome practices and go all the way, perhaps. But great for that one dude. Okay, the 7 billion of us, we're not going to be able to do that. It has to be a sort of practice that can liberate everybody, including the guy on the mountaintop. He can do Nembutsu too. Oh, spoiler, that's what he's going to recommend, right? And we can all do this as well. So the fact that we can't all accomplish through it is why Shinran says, okay, put that one on the shelf in terms of an ultimate method in this way, right? Another problem with all these sorts of techniques is that, including for monastics who are able to do them sometimes, these techniques actually can subtly increase our egotism, right? Because if you're a good practitioner progressing on the path with these things, especially in a non-Buddhist society, actually, you come to feel you're different from other people. Oh, everybody else is watching Netflix and going to Walmart, but me, I'm a good Buddhist. I'm not materialistic. I'm meditating. I follow the precepts. Like, that's not bad to do those things. Those are good. But the problem is that storyline that comes along with it reinforces the ego. Ego is the thing we're here to get rid of in the first place. Like you're back walking yourself away from nirvana the better you get at advanced Buddhism through this sort of thing. That's a problem, right? It's very hard to avoid that sort of ego trap. So this is something that Shinran again rejects because that egotism, that self-regard, that self-centeredness is so important to him as something we need to always be aware of, that it's always lying there, waiting to pounce on us, right? And separating ourselves into the good and others into the bad. This is not the way to do it, right? Also, for Shinran, these practices are just unnecessary because this awakening is going to unfold naturally as the light of the Buddha comes to us, as we are embraced by the Buddha, as we soak in the Dharma, this sort of thing. You don't need to do all these like advanced practices because you're going to naturally, over time, saying the Nembutsu, listening to teachings, it's going to unfold in you in this way. You don't need to have all that extreme sort of effort and everything. So because of all this, Shinran said, put those practices aside as ultimate methods. Instead, for him, the only really authentic religious practice is the expression of thankfulness, the expression of gratitude, right? So if you're doing meditation, if you're doing mantra, doing ritual, confession, prayer, all these sort of things, these tend to be done in a way of seeking for something. I'll say so many mantras and then I'll get back so much good karma out of that. You know, I'll make so much donation and then woohoo, I'll get something good. I'll meditate really good and then I'll get something back, right? There's an instrumental quality to it. I'm doing it. There's a gaining mind that's present, a seeking mind in this way, right? And it's, you know, your ego is the one. You hope you're not doing all these mantras. Oh, I'm going to say a million mantras, and I hope my neighbor down the street gets all the karma, good karma because of that. No, it's because me, I want it, you know? It's self-oriented in this way. But gratitude is based on non-striving. It's fundamentally different from a very common human approach to these other things. I'm not saying that everyone who's ever meditating, everyone who's ever doing mantras or anything is doing something bad or something like that, right? But there is such a human tendency to do those things with a self-regard. And unfortunately, to do them in a way that the better we get at them, the more we're sure we're really awesome at Buddhism. And again, we're just digging a hole in this case, right? Gratitude fundamentally doesn't set up that dynamic. This is why it's such a radically different sort of practice, why Shinran's teaching of Buddhism is so unique and interesting to me, right? Gratitude is based on non-striving because it's awareness of benefit of receiving that's already occurred. There's no seeking mind, no gaining mind there. There's a mind of having already received, having already gained, and not because of being better, not oh, I meditated and so I got something good. That the liberation that we receive from the Buddha is an unearned gift that comes to everybody. So it's not that, oh, I got the thing, you know, I got the thing, but so did you, so did all of this. This is an equal situation this way. I'm included, but not uniquely included in this way. There's something for everyone. So I can't gain an ego around the fact that I got the thing. Because everybody else did too, right? So this is really interesting. And for Shinran, then, when we have that feeling of gratitude, we express that gratitude through the Nembutsu. This is the formal expression of it, the formal sort of Buddhist practice. Namo Amida Butsu would say, thank you, Amida Buddha, in order to respond, right? Other Buddhists also say Namo Amida Butsu, right? It is a common practice in many different types. But in other forms of Buddhism, Namo Amida Butsu means, please save me, Amida Buddha. That's what this means. I bow to you, I venerate you, and so please, therefore, because of that, show pity on me and let me into the pure, and please, I'm begging. This is what Namo Amida Butsu means in other forms of Buddhism. But in Jodo Shinshu, those same words, that same action, doesn't have that same meaning. We're not asking please, we're saying thank you. Namo Amida Butsu for Shinran means thank you, Amida Buddha, for all that you have done for me and for everyone. It's already received. There's no begging here, right? So we have this formal expression, Namo Amida Butsu, to express that thankfulness. And then I want to suggest that also we have the everyday expressions too. These are acts of kindness, of charity, and potentially of activism, right? Because when we are grateful, when we realize we've benefited from others, we turn around and we want to express that gratitude. And these are ways in which Shinran talks about these sort of things. The signs of saying the Nembutsu for many years include, you know, a warm heart and a kindness to others and these sort of things. He talks about the wish for there to be peace in the world and everything. So on an everyday level, Shinran is always doing these sorts of things. There's many oral stories about him helping people that he met during his journeys after the exile. Right? So this gratitude is going to be very important. And let's talk about some principles for how we might apply Jodo Shinshu spirituality and be engaged in some way, right? So here's my first principle. It's that actions express our gratitude. I'll start here with a quote from Tani Sho, famous text that collects teachings of Shinran Shonin. What is quote? It is the Nembutsu that we say throughout our lives, thinking, if it weren't for this compassionate vow, how could such people as ourselves be liberated, should be recognized as entirely the expression of our gratitude for the benevolence and our thankfulness for the working of Amita's great compassion. So here it is. That's what I've just been talking about, right? This Nembutsu is an expression of gratitude, which is to say, Jodo Shinshu is an expressive religion. The things that we do are ways of acting out feelings that we have, rather than say exercises to try to achieve something that we're aiming towards. Again, this is a fundamentally different approach to Buddhism that we find in other forms of Buddhism. And it's, among other things, part of the reason that Jodo Shinshu became the largest Buddhism in Japan. This pivot that Shinran took released sort of the tremendous energies built up in Buddhism that were not available to the ordinary person. Buddhism was really for the elite up until the time of Shinran, and he made it available to everyone else through these sort of approaches. So I'm suggesting here that Nembutsu is Namo Amida Butsu, but Nembutsu in a more expansive sense are any sort of actions that we take that are done from thankfulness, from awareness and gratitude, right? We have awareness receiving from Amida Buddha, and we take the action of saying Namo Amida Butsu. Well, we may have awareness benefits received, and the action taken from gratitude may go beyond saying Namo Amida Butsu and beyond putting our hands together in Gasho, and it may take many other forms as well. These are also other forms of Nembutsu. They do not replace the vocal Nembutsu, but they may augment it as well, right? So something that I have, I think this may be covered up on the side there. It says actions, they're not something that achieves sainthood, or they're not ego-driven or something like this, right? They're done because you're thankful and you want to help others. It's just as simple as that. You're not trying to achieve a fame or something from this sort of thing. So social actions might be like a type of Nembutsu for us. Let me give an example here. Here's one that folks here in the islands will certainly probably recognize, right? Project Dana. So Project Dana, for those who may not know, this is a very important social service program. It was founded in 1989 at the Mo'iuili Honganji Temple in Honolulu by a couple of members there, right? And this has grown over the many years since then. Now there's approximately 1,000 volunteers involved in Project Dana. They're serving over 1,200 elderly and disabled people here in the islands. And what is it that Project Dana does? Well, the core mission is providing services to people who are housebound or otherwise less able to get out and do necessary things for themselves, right? So they come, they provide visitations at people's homes. They're involved in minor home repairs to help around the house, some housekeeping, cleaning, organizing, decluttering, these sort of things, right? They make safety assessments of elders' homes in order to find out, what are the risk factors here? What changes can we make? They'll deliver food. They do a degree of taking people out to the bank, a grocery store, or something if necessary. And something that's really interesting to me, well, I should say, why is this an expression of Jodo Shinshu spirituality, right? There's the gratitude here is stimulating the actions, right? We recognize all that the elders have done to care for us, to guide us, to nurture our community. And then based on that gratitude, this is paying it back or expressing our thankfulness for their lives and actions through caregiving in their later years in this way, right? And something that's really interesting, though, is that it's not just the elders or disabled persons who are receiving this care. Project Dana also provides care to the caregivers here, the volunteers themselves, the family members, the friends, this sort of thing. They're given training. They receive counseling. It's actually, it can be quite emotionally stressful to care for someone and their needs in this way. So they receive counseling through Project Dana, and there's support activities. They have get-togethers and these sort of things to increase their morale, keep them feeling appreciated, sort of thing, right? So it's caring both for the people and for the caregivers as well, which I thought was really quite a nice model. So gratitude to the caregivers motivates counseling and support and things for them as well. So what example then with that first principle? Move on to make sure that I stay on track here with my time. So a second principle is that Amida Buddha embraces all unconditionally. And again, from the Tanisho, a quick quote: the primal vow of Amida makes no distinction between people young and old, good and evil. No discrimination, right? So this tells us, of course, that discrimination is something that Amida Buddha does not allow in the Pure Land. It's not something that we should engage in or support or foster here in our own society, right? So discrimination, one of the primary things Amida is against, something that we need to not support as well, right? Amida Buddha is working for the liberation of all beings without exception. So recognizing, building solidarity, these are practices very much in tune with the Pure Land way. Let's give an example of this sort of thing. So an example of that idea of working against discrimination and unconditionally including everyone would be support for LGBTQ plus people that we've seen in the American Jodo Shinshu temples, right? Here in Hawaii, the PCA, some of this in Canada as well, actually, just say American. But what are we talking about? Well, here's actual examples. Ministers in the PCA were the very first Buddhists in the world, in history, to perform same-sex marriages. This started back in the early 1970s. This is long before there was a concerted mainstream push for marriage equality, right? Already ministers were recognizing the need, were able to relatively easily include people and recognize that people are people and people have needs, and we need to be compassionate, inclusive, and to provide services to people there. Many, many years before we had legal marriage equality, unfortunately. I've got a picture here, George Takei's wedding, George Takei from Star Trek. I think we all know, right? This is here because I'm just a big nerd. What can I say? All these Trek cast members there at the services at the LA Honganji Temple there. So very pleased with that. This is the Vinban performing the service there. And of course, the reason why Jodo Shinshu temples, ministers temples, were the first to perform these marriages is because that foundational belief in the all-embracing nature of great compassion and the absolute invalidness of any type of discrimination. Not suggesting that we're perfect, that we never have any discrimination amongst ourselves, we have no history of that, or it doesn't occur today or anything like that. But we're all people and not perfect, our communities are not perfect. But that fundamental principle is right there, staring us in the face at all times. So it means that there's a natural lean in that direction, and that we have good reasons to continue to lean and to march in that sort of direction, right? Something interesting, the world's first Buddhist P flag group, people may know P flag, acronyms stood for parents of lesbians and gays. It was the original, so this was an organization that, well, we still find today, that provides support for parents, family members, friends of people within the LGBTQ plus community to help them to find support for one another, to be better educated about how to serve their children and their family members in these ways, and to organize to help increase tolerance and acceptance within the wider societies. People like very important type of organization, right? The very first Buddhist peace flag group that there's ever been was organized here at the Hilo Betsuin back in the 1990s. So I think that's a nice further example of this sort of principle at work. And of course, Jodo Shinshu temples have been marching in pride parades for many years at this point, and holding educational sessions, this sort of thing. Reverend Amy Umezu was supposed to be speaking at the Buddhist Study Center just a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, that had to be on this topic. That had to be postponed to the Maui fire. But I hope she'll come back and talk about that. She's an expert in this area. So I did want to note, many people will be aware of the 2010 Honponganji Mission of Hawaii proclamation on this here, right? So this is from that official proclamation. The Dharma provides guidance on how to live mindfully with awareness of universal compassion, which embraces and uplifts each and every person. In order to truly realize universal compassion, we need to cultivate a profound sense of responsibility for the welfare of all beings. The Buddhist ideal of universal compassion does not discriminate between good and evil, young and old, rich and poor, gay and straight, and Buddhism affirms the inherent worth and dignity of all persons, independent of gender. Families today are composed of many combinations. What connects individuals as a family is a conscious commitment to share the responsibilities of life. This is a very good proclamation, really laying out point by point, building out of Jodo Shinshu and general Buddhist principles, why it is that we arrive at the social conclusion and application of these ideals, right? Shinran Shonin, the founder of Shin Buddhism, affirmed the inherent equality among all people whose lives are karmically bound and interconnected by teaching that the great wisdom and compassion of Amida embraces all beings equally and unconditionally without exception. So therefore, the Honponganji Mission of Hawaii, a Shin Buddhist organization, affirms that same-gender couples should have access to equal rights and quality of life as conferred by legally recognized marriage. So here it is. Here's the Kyodan going on record to say that this is a time when, of course, this is being debated here in Hawaii, that we believe that this is the proper social or legal, political application of these religious ideals that we have, that we value. This is an excerpt of the fuller proclamation you find online. It's very, very nicely. All right, so let's go to our third principle here that I want to talk about. The good are liberated, so of course the evil are liberated. So we're at Tani Show once again. What does it say? Even a good person attains birth in the Pure Land. So it goes without saying that an evil person will. So this is Shinran's radical teaching. This is very radical, this idea here. He's taking traditional Buddhism and he's turning it right on its head, upside down, in order to reveal the deeper intent of the vows of the Buddha here. So previous to Shinran, the elite forms of Buddhism, which were circulating and established and powerful in Japan, they taught that even an evil person, and some examples they gave were women, thanks a lot, and criminals, nice association, okay? Even those kind of evil people went to the Pure Land, allegedly. That's what they were saying. That's not my opinion, right? And so therefore, good Buddhists, they could rest assured that they were favored by the Buddha. Even those no accounts get in. So yeah, you're good, don't worry about yourself. Okay. Shinran turned this upside down. He was completely disgusted by that approach to Buddhism. He states that, that the point of Amida Buddhist mission was to help those who suffered the most, right? Who needed the most compassion and assistance. That's what Amita's mission was, right? To help everyone. Why to help everyone? Because we all suffer. The point is to reduce suffering. Who suffers the most? That's got to be the first that we pay attention to, right? You get everybody, but you go to where the suffering is the most first. From the point of view of the Buddha, we're all evil. We can't put ourselves in the good category. Okay? And it is not evil like, oh, you are Darth Vader. I'm gonna force choke you, something. It's not that kind of Hollywood evil, right? What Shinran is talking about is a really, really mundane, unromantic evil. Not like, super villain, Thanos, something. Like just a really stupid evil we all got, right? We're all greedy, we're all self-oriented, we are all petty, we all wake up in the morning cranky, like that sort of stuff. Everybody like this. That baseline evil is something we're all going on with. And so none of us can put ourselves into the good category over here, as much as we might want, right? We're all very ignorant. We commit wrong actions, maybe very minor ones. Hopefully you didn't stab anyone today, but like little minor things all day long. We're doing the wrong thing, right? We do this knowingly. We also do it unknowingly. We're harmful in many ways that we never even notice. It doesn't mean harm's not happening, right? So we can't really we're not good at dividing evil and good realistically, since we're all bad on a base level. But actually we go around all the time labeling people good and bad. Mostly we go around labeling other people bad. We don't spend a whole lot of time going, oh, bad, other people bad, right? So we do this. The kind of evil that we're talking about then is a false judgment, because we're not qualified to make that, but we do it all the time. So what are these sort of false judgments that these very foolish human beings are making, right? Well, evil is something that we are pointing our finger at, labeling others, the people that we want to exclude or distinguish ourselves from. That's the evil over there. I'm over here in this category. This is how this operates as a social mechanism, right? So the evil are those who are excluded by society, right? Evil is society's term for the marginalized persons, right? Those who are therefore suitable for exploitation or oppression. There's a lot that goes on in Shinran's analysis of evil and evil people. This is only one thing. There's other important things going on, but this is what I want to focus on today, right? So evil is not something that people in a group actually are. We all are in that category. Evil is a category we artificially create in order to create the idea of evil people that we can then use that against them, right? But Amida Buddha liberates everyone, right? And liberates especially those who are evil first, right? Even a good person gains birth. So of course the evil person is my first priority, says Amida Buddha, right? So following the cue of the Buddha, therefore, the so-called evil and suffering people, right? These should be the first object of our compassionate action, our compassionate being, this sort of thing. Let me give you an example. So let's talk about prison ministry. Of course, caring for those who are in the hell realm of prisons, right? This is a good example of serving the needs of those who suffer the most and who are labeled as evil by society. Prison chaplaincy began in Japan, actually with Jodo Shinshu. And virtually all prison ministry until the end of World War II was basically all carried out by Jodo Shinshu ministers. And outside of Japan, the first Buddhist prison ministry began here in Hawaii. The Reverend Ernest Hunt, who you may well have heard about, he was the first person to conduct the Buddhist prison ministry outside of Japan. Of course, he was employed by the Ganji mission, right? And on the mainland, Buddhist prison ministry began with Reverend Hogan Fujimoto, who conducted regular correspondence with prisoners, held services in San Quentin and other places. And he encountered a lot of racism, threats of violence, obstacles, but he persevered because he understood the importance that this had, right? One important effect of this, prisoners were touched, were helped by this sort of thing. And one person who was touched by Reverend Fujimoto's work was a man named Fred Cruz, a prisoner. He was a Mexican-American Jodo Shinshu Buddhist, became Buddhist through Reverend Fujimoto's efforts. And he tried to share the Dharma materials that he received from Reverend Fujimoto with other prisoners, right, to help them out this way. Because of that, the guards confiscated his books and they threw him into solitary confinement. He was only given water and 2 pieces of bread per day for weeks because of his attempt to try to share Buddhist materials with other people there. So in solitary confinement, he wrote out a lawsuit against the Texas prison system. He's in Texas. Wrote out on toilet paper. It's the only materials he had available to him, and submitted this. And his case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And in 1972, they ruled that Texas had violated his constitutional rights. And so this is the decision that made it legal to teach and practice Buddhism within the American prison system. Sort of work. An interesting situation. About 10:58. So I'm going to speed things up just a little to make sure we have a chance for some questions here. So the 4th principle that I want to talk about is the idea that I too am a foolish being. I was just saying we all are kind of reckoned evil in this way under Shinran Shonin's assessment too. So, I too, I am a foolish being. I know nothing at all of good or evil, says Tanisha. If I could know thoroughly as Amida Buddha knows that an act was good, then I would know good. If I could know thoroughly as the Buddha knows that an act was evil, then I would know evil. But with a foolish being full of blind passions in this fleeting world, this burning house, all matters without exception are empty and false, totally without truth and sincerity. The Nembutsu alone is true and real, right? So I am a foolish person too. It's not that we are good people helping out the bad people this way. Oh, we're saints, they're sinners. There's a dualism there. There's a division there. But the Pure Land Path is about breaking down the divisions between people and equally embracing all in the universal solidarity, the universal liberation of birth through the Pure Land way, right? So anytime we're setting ourselves up, we must be putting someone else down. No, and this is not the Pure Land way, right? So we have to go away from that sort of idea. Shinran really emphasizes our sort of foolishness, right? So let me give an example then of approaching social concerns with an attitude that I'm not better, that actually even though I'm helping, I'm also a problem here. I need to be humble about this sort of thing. Maybe this is the last example. I had a few other things I wanted to say today, but maybe I'll just hold those and put them in a different talk because I want to make sure we have a chance for some questions and answers. So let me be this be my last example. So here we have an example around the Burakumi situation in Japan. For people who don't know much about Japanese society, the Burakumi are Japanese outcasts. We think of caste as being something found maybe like in India or something. Japan also historically has had caste systems, and the people at the bottom of the system are the Burakumi, the most discriminated against people in Japan. Now, actually, the large majority of the Burakumi are Jodo Shinshu practitioners. This is partially because Jodo Shinshu was the group that would accept them, and also because their practices are oriented towards regular people rather than elites. So they were accessible also to Burakumi, right? But even though Jodo Shinshu did accept them and brought them in and had temples for them and this sort of thing, Jodo Shinshu is not immune to common social prejudices, right? We are human beings. there were incidents of discrimination in Japanese history by Jodo Shinshu people and institutions against Barakumin, even though they were their own members, right? So in the 1960s and 70s, the Barakumin Liberation League, which was mostly run by Jodo Shinshu people, they were agitating for civil rights for Barakumin people, for better treatment in society. And they met 8 times with official representatives from the Higashi Honganji. This is very similar to our Nishi Honganji. It's just our sort of sister denomination. So the Higashi Honganji met over and over again with this Barakumin Liberation League people from there, sent their official representatives. Here's one of those sessions. What we have is the ministers here on the one side, and we have the Barakumin on the other. Notice how, the ministers there, they're in their formal robes. There's several of them, but they're sort of fewer in a way. You have a big group of the solidarity of the Barakumin people who are all together as a big group. So they're sort of in charge in this situation here. And what were these encounter sessions? The Barakumin, and we can see a gentleman there at the microphone, they were encouraged to actually engage in denunciation of Higashi Honganji. To say, you have treated us poorly. You have done this, you have done that. Here's a list of your crimes against us. These are unacceptable. We denounce this treatment that we have had for generations, right? And the priests are there, the ministers are there to accept that denunciation, right? And they also have a microphone. So they admitted that they had violated Shinran's Dharma vision by these practices, right? They directly apologized on behalf of Higashi Honganji to the Barakumin people. And they committed to eliminating all traces of prejudice from the organization as an ongoing process. Not something you can't have a session and say, oh, we're done. They committed to the work of this sort of thing. This is the Japanese equivalent, essentially, to anti-racist work that we find here in the United States, right? So these were mini sessions that happened, and they weren't just a thing that happened, it's over. These were audio recorded, and those recordings are played as part of ministerial training in the Higashi Honganji tradition. So if you are going to become a minister, you learn the chants, you learn the rituals, you hear these audio recordings, you have discussions about what has been wrong, what needs to be done, what needs to be corrected in the future. This is a normal part of the training, essential part of it, right? And they also are taught about topics of human rights, anti-oppression. They're required parts of the ministerial training, the Higashi tradition, right? So this is an example of recognizing that we are not enlightened saints, right? We are foolish beings too. We have to continually receive criticism from those that we harm and recommit to the Dharma, to actually really living out that vision that Amida Buddha had in creating the Pure Land and setting up that example of what a harmonious, non-discriminating, well-functioning society land. So I have a few other things I might have talked about here, but I believe, yep, it's 11:05. Okay, this is a good time for me to be quiet and to receive the thoughts, questions, reactions from people here with us and anyone online. That would be wonderful as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wilson. So yeah, we have an opportunity to have some question and answers from based on this enlightening conversation, discussion about and applying Shinran's, teachings to everyday life, and how do we live out these teachings in our daily lives as Jodo Shinshu followers. So, are there any questions at this time in person or online? I know there's one question in the chat that was put in already. We can maybe take that up. So Richard asks, what is the role of Shinjin and also of a good teacher in the path to the Pure Land? I have been told that only physical presence, attendance at the temple was the only requirement for entry. at that time, the implied indication were that proper ritual and the magic word was the verbal Nembutsu were the keys to entry. My point is that the path to the Pure Land is a learning process, among others. Who does not get in on this lifetime end? Your thoughts?
Okay, thank you. If we can leave that there. Yep. A lengthy question. I want to make sure I address all the elements. Thank you, Sensei. Okay, all right. So we have the question about what the role of Shinjin is of the teacher, but I think maybe what Richard's actually getting at is this interesting perspective that he seems to have received from somewhere about go to the temple and say Nembutsu and qualify for the Pure Land in some way, right? Okay. Yeah, so let's try to clear up the misconceptions before we then talk about something further than that. Temple attendance is not a requirement for entry into the Pure Land. We at the temples, especially who, among other things, are involved in their economic survival and everything, would love to sell you a story that, hey, come to the temple and pay your dues, and you'll get the Pure Land. We would love to do that, but that's not true. So temple attendance is a wonderful thing that I strongly encourage for everyone who is able to do so for a number of reasons. It is by going to the temple that you're able to soak in the Dharma, able to encounter other Dharma friends there. These are things that will help you on your Buddhist path through life, right? So these are good and important things. If you're able to do them, I strongly encourage them for that reason. I encourage them for another reason, which is that these temples are very important, what we call third spaces in American culture. Almost everything these days has been reduced to the private constricted space of the nuclear family home, which has ever fewer people in it, maybe more pets than it used to, but ever fewer people, right? Or businesses where you go out and you buy a bit of human contact. Go to a restaurant, go to a bar, go to a store. Out of people shopping is like your one chance to even just see other people. This sort of and that's all just designed to take the money out of your pocket at the end of the day. So the third space is the idea that beyond the ever more constricted privatized home space and the basically commodified outside of the home landscape, that you also have places, these are imperiled in today's society, but they do exist. The temple's a good example. They're not there as a private thing closed off, and they're not there to take your money, no matter what it seems like when we do ask for the dues at the temple, right? That they exist not as corporations to make money. They exist as places for another reason. They exist as places where people can gather without being economically motivated and can gather as families, but with other families, with other people on a different scale, and to be devoted to positive things that are valuable to our society. So I think it's important to support the temples for those reasons, right? They're also just really good to get out and go to it, and very helpful to people as we have lots of social problems like mental and emotional issues these days. Temples are a really good place to go and find support amongst other people. So with that long preface, yes, please do donate to the temple if you can and go to it. That said, temples are absolutely not necessary for the practice of Jodo Shinshu. Shinran Shonin had no temples. There were no Jodo Shinshu temples during the time of Shinran Shonin. There were other Buddhist temples. He went to them sometimes, especially if they had an Amida statue. He would go and offer his respect and this sort of thing. But there weren't any Jodo Shinshu temples. These are something that came the generations after him. And yet Jodo Shinshu spread widely during his lifetime without a single temple, through people meeting in other people's homes, just sharing the Nembutsu together in this sort of way. Now, I am glad that temples came along. They're a positive, useful development that provides infrastructure to support the continuance, the survival and propagation of the Dharma. They're a good thing, but they're in no way necessary as such. So whoever said that was a little misguided with that idea. There's also an idea that you have to say the Nembutsu a bunch of times that's in there, and that somehow will be the ticket that gets you entrance into the Pure Land. It does not work that way in Jodo Shinshu. It does work that way in some other forms of Buddhism. In fact, there's some that encourage you to count your number of Nembutsu per day, trying to hit a certain goal, right? In this way. This is a real practice. It goes on today and it goes back in history. We don't do that in Jodo Shinshu, right? This is actually why. So we have our beads, right? And in other forms of Buddhism, these are talked about as juzu, with the idea that these are counting beads. So Namo Amida Butsu, 1. Namo Amida Butsu, 2. Namo Amida Butsu, 3. I'm trying to go for like 10,000 a day or 10 million or something like that, right? What do we call them? We call them ninju. Nin about counting. That nin is a mindfulness of the Buddha. So these are Buddhas of remembrance, not of counting. We remember that we have received. The Shinjin is given to us freely, and oh, that's amazing. Amo Amida Butsu. Amo Amida Butsu. So you're expressing a feeling. You're not counting to achieve something this way, right? So, put on a caveat. Saying Nembutsu is great. Please do it. It's good to do. I'm not saying you don't need to do it or that you shouldn't do it or something like this, but it's not a ticket. It doesn't get you at going to the temple, no matter how many times you go to the temple, isn't what provides Shinjin directly or entrance into the Pure Land directly. If it did, you could just go to the temple forever and like take a nap. Some people do. I'm not saying who, and it all be taken care of for you, right? Or you just say Nembutsu forever without paying any attention to what you're doing, just mechanically. You could just have a robot, right? We got all these AIs now, but I'm just going to program Chat GPT to spit out Namo Amida Butsu 1 billion times a day, and then my computer will go to Pure Land before me. It does not. That's not what it's about, right? So these are great practices, but they're not the requirements at all. The requirement is to be a suffering, sentient being. That's the requirement to go to the Pure Land. If you are a suffering being, then you are who Amida exists for, and Amida is going to take care of you. That's the requirement. Okay. There was some other stuff about something about getting Shinjin and the role of good friends. Yeah. So good friends are great. There are forms of Buddhism, including forms of Jodo Shinshu, that stress the idea of a good friend, Senjishiki, the good Dharma friend that you meet through karmic, fortunate karmic circumstances from the past. And this person gives you the key that unlocks Shinji for you. There are forms of Jodo Shinshu that stress that. There are forms that don't. I personally don't stress that. This doesn't mean that I haven't had good friends. For example, Reverend Taitetsu Uno, very formative person in bringing me into Jodo Shinshu and putting me on the path to where I am today. I named my son Tai in his honor. So yes, I've had a good Dharma friend in this way. So it's very important to me. But whether or not you have that sort of particular individual in your life is immaterial. Wonderful if you do, but a good friend on the path is anyone who supports you in any way at all, right? They don't have to be some high muckety-muck with a bunch of Buddhist degrees and this sort of thing, right? Everybody is being a good friend to us all the time in the Sangha. That's what the Sangha is. The Sangha actually democratizes that idea of the good friend of the teacher, right? So we got teachers, we got ministers, we got people who put in the work to learn more so that they can do more for us. But at the end of the day, the Sangha is a democratized version of the previously singular good teacher, where everybody all together is supporting each other as we walk the Dharma path. That's what really matters. So don't be stressed out if you haven't met your perfect teacher. Teacher-disciple relationships, that's for other forms of Buddhism, like Zen or something, where you can't actually progress without the master who from the outside kind of breaks down your ego and helps you to progress this way. Here we're walking together. We're moving together, failing together, we're being liberated together. This is the Sangha path, Jodo Shinshu. Okay. I want to see if there's maybe some other questions. Yeah, I got some time.
Yes.
And if I could take one here, since we had a long one from online. Don't be shy. Anybody here present have anything they want to talk about?
Oh. Okay, I don't really have a question, but didn't Honen, Shinran's teacher, didn't he put out some of the things that you're crediting Shinran with, like making the Dharma available to everybody? He's
Yes.
the one who was accepting like criminals and women and prostitutes and, you know, all kinds of samurai who had killed lots of people. He was accepting them into his Sangha, and I think that was Shinran's example.
Yes. So the fact that Shinran did these things doesn't mean Shinran alone did these things, right? We do have to note there is a difference, something unique about Shinran, but Honen had to walk so that Shinran could run. There is no Shinran without Honen. Honen's contributions are very important, very valuable. Absolutely. In case there were people online or otherwise who couldn't hear the question, it was a very good point that some of the things we're talking about as strengths of Shinran's teachings are things that Shinran is building on coming from Honen, his teacher already, right? And also some of that opening the Dharma doors to be more inclusive, such as to women, prostitutes, warriors, and so on. This is something that Honen was involved in. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so Honen is also a very radical figure, like Shinran. It's really amazing that we were able to get these sort of two generations who worked together and knew each other, and who both pushed those doors open and more open in this way. Honen, very important. He was the first person to leave Mount Hiei to drop out of the elite Buddhism, the establishment Buddhism of time, and seek a different path, right? And to do so in order to bring in the people that the Buddhism of the mountain was excluding, right? He wanted Buddhism of the city, of the people. So he literally came down to the city from the mountain and taught pure Buddhism to people. Yeah, so this is very good. He did build a community that was inclusive of women, that it was inclusive of people with social roles that were discriminated against, right? And this sort of thing. That's absolutely true. Very important person. At the same time, Honen took Buddhism very far, but he only took it so far. You can only go so far, maybe, because he took it a long way from what it had been. But at the end of the day, his form of Buddhism, which became Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, still was based on the idea that one does the Nembutsu, and the Nembutsu has a purifying quality, among other things. As we say the Nembutsu, we purify out all that bad karma from the past, which caused us to be born as a woman, caused us to be born as someone who becomes a prostitute, caused us to be born into a situation where we had to go to war and kill people and be involved in things we shouldn't do, and this sort of thing. That idea is still right there in that form of Buddhism. The elite Buddhism was saying, oh, you're in these bad situations because of bad things you did, and there's a ranking here, and you're at the bottom, and that's where you should be. Maybe if you're able to pay us enough, we'll do all the rituals on your behalf, and then you'll get some good karma. And then in the future, you get to be born as a man, and then you get to be a monk, and then you do the hard stuff we're doing. And that's your way. Honen short circuits that by saying, your bad karma has brought you to these points. He's still saying that. But that isn't a barrier, because there is a practice that you can do. You don't have to have the monks do it for you. Even though you're in a lifestyle where you can't do the advanced practices, you can say the Nembutsu a lot, because it's easy to say Nembutsu a bunch of times. And the more you do it, every time you do, it's flushing out that bad karma. Amida Buddha has provided a way for you to do a practice that will take you to the Pure Land. This is a massive step forward for Japan of the time. At the same time, it's not the same as what Shinran is doing, because Shinran here, he learns from Honen. He sees these people being accepted. He feels accepted despite feeling himself to be a very imperfect person. He meditates on all this, he reflects on this, and he takes the underlying logic deeper to go even more in harmony with what he sees as the original intent of Amida Buddhist vows. And so he doesn't feel that you need to do a bunch of Nembutsu and hope that's enough. And that another important part of Honen's teaching was, if you do it enough, your mind will become purer, calmer, and at the time of death, because you prepared yourself, your mind will be good, and so your good mind will go to the pure. It's very much a medieval Japanese religious anxiety about the state of mind at the end of death. They had all these practices in Jodo Shinshu. For example, when you were dying, the monks would come and they would chant Nembutsu around you a lot so that your mind would stay focused on Nembutsu. And they would put up a picture of Amida Buddha at your feet, at the foot of the bed. And they would tie a string from the Amida Buddha's picture to your finger as you're on your deathbed. And they're trying to get you to chant you. So that's literally like a karmic connection right there, right? These are all these practices that Honen's community innovated to try to, so that at the end of your life, you're so focused that your evil mind doesn't take you to hell realm, something like this, but instead your mind is you focus on Amida Buddha, you go to the Pure Land instead. So there's a real anxiety. We might miss our shot. We might be very upset. We might be in pain. We might be ruminating on all the bad things we did. We might be, distracted by our iPhone. Oh, we missed our chance. Amida was coming in. We were too busy. Pokemon Go. No, I didn't go Pure Land. Right? That was a real anxiety that also still persists within Jodo Shinshu as a possibility. Shinran's like, nah. One Nembutsu. This is just so radical, right? I've studied this for decades, but it's amazing to me when I just say it out loud. I think about it. It's so radical for his time. No, all anybody needs to do, including people allegedly in those evil categories, say Nembutsu one time out of that gratefulness, recognizing that's it. Shinran doesn't say, okay, you're done, don't ever say it again, but it doesn't matter anymore. And Shinran is explicit that if at the end of your life things are not going great, if you don't see Amida Buddha coming on like purple clouds and all this sort of stuff, like whatever, it's taken care of. So this is a real difference. He is really going well beyond Honen with that, but he's only able to do that because Honen showed him the way, and so he thinks he's just taking Honen places that Honen didn't get to. Honen was an older man. He was sent into exile. He died. And so who knows where he would have been in the end. But Shinran went a long way further. He took those things that were seeds already that Honen gave him.
Thank you.
There was a question online earlier.
Sure.
I think Rod had a question regarding homeless individuals who have been frequent our temples, and how should we respond to the homeless, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. So that's a very practical question. Thank you. So this is something that, of course, temples, churches in general, and so on, religious organizations, if you're especially in an urban area, you already know from a long time. You already know that people will come by, right? Sometimes they're seeking services, hoping that there's some food or something available there, or clothing. Sometimes they're searching for some charity. Maybe the minister has a discretionary fund and give them some pocket money or something like this. Sometimes they just need somewhere to shelter because it gets really hot out here, or rainy, or where I'm from, very cold. So this sort of thing, right? So this is a common sort of situation. So how should we treat people who come, right? So of course, there's going to be a lot of specific situations where it matters in that situation exactly how to be. So I can only talk kind of in the abstract. In the abstract, of course, we want to take care of everyone, right? Amida doesn't care whether you're housed or unhoused. It has nothing to do with the primal vow, right? Amida Buddha takes care of anyone. If anything, Amida Buddha is more concerned about someone who's suffering due to being unhoused than to someone who's comfortable, such as myself at this time, right? So that's obviously a person who is included within the Buddhist care and who is a person who is also destined for the Pure Land like the rest of us, right? So we don't have any reason to exclude that person. We only have reasons to include that person, right? A lot of people have fear or anxiety around unhoused people. Sometimes people have had experiences that may justify for themselves why they have some of those feelings. A lot of times you just have stereotypes or ideas they picked up from others, from the media, that are not accurate, or certainly you don't know whether they apply to any given person that comes to you, right? So you have to be really careful with those kind of socially derived anxieties or prejudices that we have, which prevent us from actually responding to the person in front of us, a person who is in need if they have come to the temple. They may have come to the temple out of material need. They may have come to the temple out of spiritual need, just like the rest of us, right? It is something that we should try to provide for in that situation, right? So part of being inclusive is about re-educating ourselves. And this includes also maybe trying to educate ourselves in ways that we can be more inclusive of our unhoused neighbors as well. I do recognize that in some situations, there may be a level of risk or danger involved with specific individuals, right? When you're unhoused, sometimes there's many reasons that drive people in that situation. One reason for some people sometimes is because of maladaptive behaviors, such as addiction or other situations, which make the person possibly risk to themselves or to others. So you have to be aware of that. That's, of course, a minority of people in that sort of situation. Most unhoused people are women and children, like the majority in America, the majority in North America, at least. I assume also here in Hawaii. I haven't seen the numbers specifically for Hawaii. So you just have to be very careful, be very humane, hopefully be prepared ahead of time. Like, people come to temples, right? I think probably many of us have had some situations, certainly probably all the ministers have had sort of thing. So if we know it's going to happen, then right now is the time to already be thinking about how we're going to respond, educating ourselves, putting in place support systems. Obviously, advocating, for political and social solutions to these difficult problems is part of that as well. I'm not sure if that's an adequate enough answer for Rod. All I can really talk about is principles here, because the actual situation is going to be different with each individual, which is going to be diverse.
Thank you for your answer, Jeff.
Thank you, Art.
Thanks, Rod. Oh, good to see you, Rod.
Yeah.
Rod, did you have a follow-up?
No, it is a real challenge for us.
Rod, you are muted, just so you know.
I'm muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can. Hi there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We have a major homeless problem out in Waihawa, and we have one particular person who camps out right by our temple, and it is a real problem because he is mentally ill. We've contacted his family. The family doesn't want to have anything to do with him, and so it's a constant process of trying to clear up his mess that he leaves right on our temple ground. So yeah, it is a challenge. No, I don't know. There is no easy solution to it. I'm just wondering. I appreciate your answer too. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rod. Good to see you. Been
Yeah.
about 5 years, I think, since the last time I saw you.
Yes,
So,
good seeing you.
so
Thank you
yeah,
very much.
here we go. Yeah,
Very
a
good.
concrete situation with one person there coming and with some mental instability and everything. So this is the real difficulty we have to think about, right? Because our temples are multi-generational situations. You don't know whether someone's safe around children, for example, around elders, this sort of thing. So these are really difficult questions. There's not a perfect solution. There isn't going to be. This is samsara, not the Pure Land. We don't get to eliminate suffering. We don't get to have perfect solutions. That's not the world that we live in currently. What we can only do is try our best to do the least harmful things in the situations that we are in, and just try to work with them. Yeah. So thank you for caring about that person, and hopefully continuing to work in a way that will be helpful to the whole Sangha and to this individual. This is not unique at all. I think, for example, of a situation, I was out in Denver last year, and a minister there was telling me about how several unhoused people were camping behind. They got a great big bell outside, and there were several people camping like all throughout the COVID lockdown period back in there. And the temple was closed, so she was like, "Yeah, whatever, they gotta sleep somewhere. Why not sleep here? This sort of thing." But also, when they get to open up, then they had to start talking with people about what were things they could permit on their grounds and what they couldn't, among other things that were legal liabilities and all this sort of thing. So it's not good solutions, but as long as we approach with compassion and keep trying to check ourselves and our reactions and everything, we can try to do the best with an imperfect situation over time.
Thank you. Thank you. Good seeing you, Jeff.
Thanks.
Oh,
So we have a few more minutes for questions. Is there any questions here in person in the audience? Now's your chance. Oh. Going once.
Okay.
So we have another question online.
Sure.
That came through the chat. So this is from Ken. For over 50 years, he's dreamed of a humble home mission of Hawaii setting up a large private nonprofit comprehensive social service agency. Would Dharmakara Services be an appropriate name for it?
Hey, that's cool. Love the idea. Yeah, if it's possible. Okay. So yeah, obviously Dharmakara Services would be great. You can do a little bit of what do they call that? Like focus group testing to see how people react to that sort of name, right? I love it, but I'm a Buddhist studies professor. I don't know if the average person will respond to a 4-syllable Sanskrit term as immediately as I do. So you might want to test that one out. Maybe people really respond to it. That would be lovely. But certainly that's the kind of thing that, this is consistent with Dharmakara's intent, because providing to other people to reduce their suffering is why the Pure Land was created. So if you are in this life putting together an organization that helps to reduce suffering through providing a sort of comprehensive social services, yeah, it's a lovely thing. I would love to be involved in that sort of thing if it exists.
Any other final questions for Dr. Wilson? Actually, I had a question. How would you respond to this idea that, because everything's taken care of by Amida, or because everything is kind of all done for us, that we really don't have to do anything, right, in life? We don't have, we just kind of let everything be, right? So sometimes there is this attitude of, oh, we can't do anything, so we can't do it perfectly, so we shouldn't do anything at all.
Right. So are you talking about in regards to reducing suffering?
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Okay. So you don't have to do any of these things. They're not going to be like that. They're not going to like check your report card and you didn't help the homeless. You didn't feed people. You didn't march with a placard. Sorry. You try again next time. It's not like that. Okay. But so these are not requirements in any way. You could just relax. You could just hang out and just coast to the end. But I think if we're really soaking in the Dharma and really thinking about really being aware of the enormity of what is done for us, I do think that gratitude is a very natural, very human response, right? And that gratitude, at least as Shinran understands it, needs to have an outlet. It needs to. If you're really grateful, it's it's like you're so grateful and so full of gratitude sometimes, like you gotta let it out. It's like shaking a soda bottle or something, right? It's got all that energy's pent up. You want to release it somehow and express it. So I guess it is an expressive form of Buddhism. So if you have that sort of feeling, then you want to say Namo Buddha, but maybe you also want to do for others. Because you look around, I think most people are able to see suffering. We don't see all the suffering, all the particulars all the time. So well trained for that sort of thing. But we can see it plenty of times. And when you see suffering, wouldn't you feel motivated to try to lend a hand, try to do something? I think this is a very natural sort of thing. So yeah, you could coast, but I kind of like, why would you? The other thing is the idea that, we're not perfect, so we can't get it right. So why do anything at all? That was part of the question too, I think. Yeah, we can't get it right. And to be clear, we're not going to turn samsara into the Pure Land. If I get all 7 billion people on board with my particular political, social agenda and everything, we all work together and do that, it's still going to be problems. The suffering is a part of every life. This is the first noble truth, right? The richest person already has they don't have material wants or anything. They still suffer all the time, right? Suffering is produced by material lack, but material excess is not going to therefore produce all suffering, right? You're still going to have lots of other forms of suffering as well. So we're never going to make things perfect. That doesn't mean you don't do anything at all, right? I think actually everybody is motivated all the time to help out other people. So why not just be kind of proactive about it, think it through and work at kind of larger scales. Yeah, we can't get it perfect, but we can do better. Like, Lahaina just burned down. We could do nothing. Like, first of all, we're not living there right now, and we could just let it be, But I think almost everybody is like, yeah, we can't rebuild it perfect. We can't put anybody who's dead back alive. But there are things we can do, and we immediately feel, let's do something. So I think that's a very encouraging thing. Yeah, we're not going to rebuild perfect behind it, but it's going to be better than if we just left everybody just sitting in the ashes. So yeah, we can do what we can do.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Any final final questions before we wrap up our session today? Okay, I want to just thank everybody very much, both here in person and online, for joining us for this very, very interesting discussion on living Nembutsu and how do we apply these teachings to our everyday lives in a real practical way, guided by Shinran's teachings. I want to thank Dr. Wilson for this amazing discussion and presentation today, and for all your work that you've done in this area on social engagement. So a few things. We'll be putting in the chat for those of you online a link to our online evaluation form, so please fill that out. And there it is right now. Also, those of you in person, we'll be passing out paper evaluation, so please fill that out. Your feedback is really helpful in helping us plan future Buddhist education opportunities that are interesting and responsive and enriching for our Dharma learning. So yeah, I think for those of you who did participate in person, we do have lunch, I think, that's available. And so Also, those of you online, thank you again for joining us and for being here and participating. And so, before we conclude, let's offer words of thanksgiving as we go off and have our meals at this time. So please join me in Gasho. We're truly grateful for this wonderful food, a gift of life. May we share its benefits with all beings. As we partake of this food, let us remember Amida Buddha's compassion, which surrounds all people and all forms of life. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida.
Humbly and respectfully, we receive this food. Itadakimasu.
Itadakimasu.
Namata. Again, thank you very much, everybody.